Hey everybody, Johnny Cage here, welcoming you back to another game review. This time we're taking a look at WWF Royal Rumble, developed by Sculptured Software and published by LJN, released June 8th, 1993 on the Super Nintendo. Switching on the game will present you with 4 different modes of play, from the standard one-on-one where you can face off in exhibition-style fights, or turn things into a brawl where the only way to win is to deplete your opponent's life bar. There's also a tournament option where you attempt to fight your way through every other wrestler for your chance at the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. There are also modes for tag team as well as 6-man tag team matches, and of course the game's namesake, the Royal Rumble match, which you can only win after every other wrestler has been tossed over the top rope and you are the last man standing. All of these modes come with your option of playing with 1 or 2 players, as well as choosing the difficulty on a scale of 1 to 10, and if you would like to pick your opponents, or would rather leave it up to the computer to randomly select them. The game features a roster of 12 different wrestlers, and while early and mid-90s was not the greatest time to be a wrestling fan, there are still some here that even the most casual of viewers will be familiar with. You got the Macho Man Randy Savage delivering his signature elbow drop from the top rope, Mr. Perfect ending the match perfectly with his perfect plex, though this doesn't automatically transition into a pin, which is a shame. The Undertaker and his devastating tombstone pile driver, the excellence of execution, Bret the Hitman Hart applying the sharpshooter, though you can't actually make your opponent submit. Tatanka whipping his foe off the ropes before executing an incapacitating reverse slam, Crush attempting to literally crush another man's head with his cranium crunch maneuver, the Nature Boy Ric Flair applying the torturous figure 4 leg lock, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels tuning up the band with a back suplex? Yeah, this was apparently about a year out from when he would start using Sweet Chin music as his finisher. The Bad Guy, Razor Ramon, driving his victim downward with the Razor's Edge, the definitely Japanese Yokozuna and his debilitating Banzai drop, which surprisingly never killed anyone that we know of. The short-lived narcissist gimmick of Lex Luger with his running forearm, which is way more trouble to pull off than it's worth if you ask me. And finally, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase putting your lights out with the $1 Million Dream Sleeper Hold. The gameplay is focused around tug-of-war grappling, where the 2 superstars will lock up and leave it up to the player to determine who gets the upper hand by mashing the face and shoulder buttons of their controller as quickly as possible, with the primary button you are mashing performing a move if you should be able to get your side of the meter deep into the green. But the action doesn't stop with grappling alone, as there are all sorts of ways to bring the pain, such as battering your foe while they are down, or going to the top rope for a high-risk maneuver. And who says you have to play fair either? You can always leave the ring if you want and pick up the nearby chair to smash over the other guy's head, which is still pretty sickening to see, especially with it bent in half afterwards. But the ref doesn't seem to mind that much. Just make sure you get back in the ring before the count of 10, otherwise you get counted out and lose the match. Who does the ref think he is anyway, getting in the way of your fun? Just run him over and knock him out for a bit, which turns this into a real street fight, with L now performing eye gouges and R straight up strangling the competition. As the match progresses, your health bar begins dwindling down, and you can definitely tell it gets harder to win those lockups. And if you're not careful, your health bar will be completely drained and the opponent will be able to pin you without even having a chance to kick out. While single bouts are fine and all, and tag team fights can add more bodies to the brawl, we are really here for the game's namesake, the Royal Rumble. Here you'll pick a lone wrestler to take on all comers in Rumble Mayhem, starting with just yourself and one other person in the ring, although it won't take long for it to begin filling up, holding up to 6 superstars at the same time. That is of course unless they get eliminated by being tossed over the top rope. Anything goes in this mode, and it's definitely the highlight of the game. It can be lots of fun to see if you can be the one to eliminate each of the other 11 wrestlers at the lower difficulties, or crank the difficulty dial all the way up for a good challenge. The controls in the game are very situational, much like playing offense or defense in a sports game. While standing up, B will punch and A will kick, while Y will make your character run, and X will start a grapple. Speaking of grappling, that's probably what you're going to be doing most of the time, which can really put your mashing skills to the test. Kinda sad to see this control scheme done away with only a few years after this title's release, as it was the way most wrestling games were programmed up until this point, and really made it easy for new and younger players to jump right into the game without knowing the exact controls. Then again, it doesn't take many matches before your hand and maybe even your controller have to throw in the towel and need to sit out a few rounds to recover, especially when playing against a second player and after a long period of mashing having a lockup broken because neither of you could get the upper hand. If you do manage to get your opponent into the danger zone though, the finishing moves are pulled off with the R button, whether it be the primary button used in a grapple or has to be executed from a certain position, and when your adversary has finally had enough, you can press the X button to pin them. The graphics are about what you would expect for a mid-life SNES title, perhaps a little below as I would have liked to see some more character detail, but I guess they put all of their work into the wrestlers' portraits on the character select screen. Still a good enough effort to easily distinguish the superstars from one another, and the presentation of the ring as well as having a ref and commentators reacting to the action is a nice touch. I was a bit distracted by all the people wearing Hulk Hogan merchandise in the stands though, seeing as how he isn't even in the game, but after doing some digging I found out he is in the Genesis version and the designer simply couldn't be bothered to remove it for this port, I guess. The sound design is certainly a bright spot with this one. The opening music really gets you amped up for the action to come, and wow, they really outdid themselves when it comes to the entrance themes of the different wrestlers. Seriously, Shawn Michaels' Sexy Boy has got to be one of the most catchy themes they have ever done, and it does not disappoint here. Today you can grab yourself a copy of WWF Royal Rumble on the Super Nintendo for about $13 American on eBay, or if you prefer the Genesis you can grab it on that console for about the same price. In total there were 4 WWF games released for the SNES, and I chose to review this one because it was the one I grew up with after getting into wrestling back in the mid-90s. And while it's arguably better than the first entry on the system, Super WrestleMania, most people prefer the third entry, WWF Raw, over this one. And I can sort of see why. You can play up to 4 players with a few more game modes, and the roster here is more accurate of that mid-90s time period. The animations for the moves are also a bit more fluid, though everyone still has the same moveset, which is a detriment for both titles. The standout feature for Raw is absolutely the crazy mega moves you can pull off, which require your opponent to not only be low on health, but also a series of precise button inputs that are different for each wrestler. And if you want super moves, you might as well be playing WrestleMania the arcade game, which plays closer to a Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat title than a typical wrestling game. Maybe we'll chat about this one someday. All things considered, Royal Rumble is undoubtedly an old school wrestling game for old school fans, complete with its old school control scheme that newer gamers might just gawk at in its simplicity. But this title does exactly what you want a retro game to do, which is take you back to the past, putting a smile on your face and letting you share a laugh with someone who experienced this era the same way you did. I'm going to go ahead and give WWF Royal Rumble 6 out of 10. It will only take you a couple of matches to see everything this game has to offer, but it was designed for short spurts of play to begin with. Hell, you might not even need to play the game. You can just sit there scrolling through the superstars, listening to the awesome music, and reminiscing about matches you remember seeing these guys in back in the day. And sometimes, that's all you need. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you'd like to stay posted on new game reviews as I upload them, please click the subscribe button, as well as checking out the link in the description below for my Twitch channel, where I stream most days. I'll talk to you all later on.